Thank you for watching me on YouTube. As always, I present myself as an honest, unapologetic voice out there for those who are willing to listen. I usually talk about issues facing my community, the government, and of course the corrupt mainstream media.
The site of our Republican presidential debate.
As a small business owner, one of the big obstacles I have in growing my business in today's economy is having the confidence and incentive to go out and hire new employees. I'm wondering what each one of our candidates would propose to do as president to help incent small businesses like mine to hire new employees and to confidently grow our business in this troublesome economic environment.
Governor Perry, I'll put that question to you.
Yes, sir. Well, Rick Scott's sitting right over there, and he and I compete every day with trying to get jobs into our states. And what we've done in the state of Texas over the course of the last decade is to lower that tax burden on the small businessmen and women, have a regulatory climate that is fair and predictable, and a sweeping tort reform that we passed in 2003 that told the personal injury trial lawyers, don't come to Texas because you're not going to be suing our doctors frivolously. That's the way you get the government off of the back of small businessmen and women, and that's the way you free up those small business entrepreneurs where they know that they can risk their capital and have a chance to have a return on investment. If it'll work in the state of Texas, it'll work in Washington, D.C., and that's exactly what I'm going to bring to Washington when I go there in in January of 2013.
As you can see from Brandy and Michael in Spencer, Indiana.
There's growing concern among Americans about the size and the scope of the federal government and its infringement upon state and individual rights.
If you're elected president, how do you plan to restore the 10th Amendment, hold the federal government only to those enumerated powers in the Constitution, and allow states to govern themselves?
Obviously, it would take more than one individual, but the responsibility of the president would be to veto every single bill that violates the 10th Amendment. That would be the solution.
Anything else there? You got a little time left.
Well, I'll tell you what, that is the subject that is crucial because government is too big in Washington, D.C. It's run away. We have no controls of spending, taxes, regulations, no control in the Federal Reserve printing money. So if we want government, whether it's medical care or whatever, it's proper to do it at the local level as well as our schools. But there's no authority in the Constitution to do so much of what we're doing. There's no authority for them to run our schools, no authority to control our economy, and no authority to control us as individuals on what we do with our personal lives.
Hi, I'm Stella Lohman from Atlanta, Georgia. I've taught in both public and private schools and now as a substitute teacher. I see administrators more focused on satisfying federal mandates, retaining funding, and trying not to get sued, while the teachers are jumping through hoops, trying to serve up a one-size-fits-all education for their students. What, as president, would you seriously do about what I consider a massive overreach of big government into the classroom? Thank you.
Care about your children, you'll get the federal government out of the business of educating our kids.
You, Governor Romney, believe that President Obama is a socialist.
Let me tell you the title that I want to hear said about President Obama, and that is former President Barack Obama. Obama is a big spending liberal, and he takes his political inspiration from Europe and from the socialist Democrats in Europe. Guess what? Europe isn't working in Europe. It's not going to work here. I believe in America. I believe in the opportunity and in the freedom that is American opportunity and freedom. I believe in free enterprise and capitalism. I believe government is too big because I believe in the principles that make America the hope of the earth. Thank you.
Romney, you're satisfied with that?
Well, it's different than what the governor put in his book just 6 months ago, and what you said on your interviews following the book. So I don't know. There's a Rick Perry out there that's saying that almost to quote, it says that the federal government shouldn't be in the pension business, that it's unconstitutional, and it should be returned to the states. So you better find that Rick Perry and get him to stop saying that. Now, my own view is that we have to make it very, very clear that Social Security is a responsibility of the federal government, not the state governments. We're going to have one plan, and we're going to make sure that it's fiscally sound and stable. And I'm absolutely committed to keeping Social Security working. I put in my book that I wrote a couple of years ago a plan for how we can do that and to make sure Social Security is stable, not just for the next 25 years, but for the next 75. Thank you.
And I would like to respond to that.
Go ahead, Governor Perry.
Speaking of books and talking about being able to have things in your books and back and forth, and your economic advisor talked about Romneycare and how that was an absolute bust, and it was exactly what Obamacare was all about. As a matter of fact, between books, your hard copy book, you said that it was exactly what the American people needed to have that Romneycare given to them as you had in Massachusetts. Then in your paperback, you took that line out. So speaking of not getting it straight in your book, sir, that would be a good one.
Governor Johnson, same question to you about the 10th Amendment. With this added, you are an outspoken libertarian. What makes you a better choice for libertarian Republicans than Congressman Paul?
I'm not going to presume to make that assumption, but I would like to say that I do bring a unique perspective to this stage. I started a one-man handyman business in Albuquerque in 1974 and grew it to over 1,000 employees. I have run for 2 political offices in my life, governor of New Mexico and re-election. I promised to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. I promise to veto legislation where expenditures exceed revenue. And if anybody doubts my willingness to veto bills, I think I vetoed more bills than any governor in the history of the United States. I think I vetoed more bills than all the other governors in the country combined.
Speaker Gingrich, this next one's for you. You've criticized extending unemployment benefits, saying that you are, quote, opposed to giving people money for doing nothing. Benefits have already been extended to 99 weeks, and they are set to expire soon. If you were president today, would you extend unemployment benefits? And if not, how do you justify that to the millions of unemployed Americans who are looking in earnest and whose families are depending on those checks?
Well, what I've said is that I think unemployment compensation should be tied directly to a training program. And if you don't have a job and you need help, then in order for us to give you the help, you should sign up for a business-led training program so that 99 weeks becomes an investment in human capital, giving us the best trained workforce in the world so you can get a job. But I believe it is fundamentally wrong to give people money for 99 weeks for doing nothing. That's why we had welfare reform.
Congresswoman Bachmann, after the last debate, a young member of the California Tea Party said he didn't feel that he had had his question fully answered. And it's a question that received the most votes on Google and YouTube on the list as well. The answer to his question is a number. And the question was, quote, out of every dollar I earn, how much do you think that I deserve to keep?
I think you earned every dollar. You should get to keep every dollar that you earn. That's your money. That's not the government's money. The American people are the genius of this economy. It certainly isn't government that's the genius, and that's the two views. President Obama has embraced a view of government-directed temporary fixes and gimmicks. They don't work. He's destroyed the economy. What does work is private solutions that are permanent in the private sector. That gives certainty. That will grow our economy.
Excuse me, Brett. Could I weigh in on this?
Congresswoman Bachmann.
I'd like to weigh in on this because according to the State Department's website, there are 4 nations that are state sponsors of terror. Cuba is one of those nations. We would never have flights between the United States and Cuba. It's a state sponsor of terror.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Now to
With unemployment numbers remaining above 9%, union issues such as the National Labor Relations Board lawsuit against Boeing and several union battles in state legislatures across the country have become incredibly relevant to the national discussion. For all the candidates, would you support some form of a federal right-to-work law allowing all workers to choose whether or not to join a union?
That's for you, Senator Santorum.
I think the most important area that we have to focus in on when it comes to unions is public employee unions. That's the area of unionization that's growing the fastest, and it's costing us the most money. We've seen these battles on the state level where unions have really bankrupted states, from pension plans to here in the federal level, for example, 30 to 40% union employees make above their private sector equivalents. I do not believe that state, federal, or local workers, unions, should be involved in unions. And I would actually support a bill that says that we should not have public employee unions for the purposes of wages and benefits to be negotiated.
In 2010, when I was deployed to Iraq, I had to lie about who I was because I'm a gay soldier, and I didn't want to lose my job. My question is, under one of your presidencies, do you intend to circumvent the progress that's been made for gay and lesbian soldiers in the military?
Any type of sexual activity has absolutely no place in the military, and the fact that they're making a point to include it as a provision within the military that we are going to recognize a group of people and give them a special privilege and removing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I think tries to inject social policy into the military, and the military's job is to do one thing, and that is to defend our country. We need to give the military, which is all volunteer, the ability to do so in a way that is most efficient in protecting our men and women in uniform, and I believe this undermines that ability.
What would you do as president?
I think look, what we're doing is playing social experimentation with our military right now, and that's tragic. I would just say that going forward, we would reinstitute that policy if Rick Santorum was president, period.
As president, you would subsidize natural gas companies. How is that different from the Obama administration, which gave the solar panel company Solyndra $500 million in federal loan guarantees? And as we all know, that company ended up bankrupt, and we taxpayers ended up on the hook.
To be able to bring our people together in America until we fix the economy. I'm convinced that part of the divide that we're experiencing in the United States, which is unprecedented, it's unnatural, and it's un-American, is because we're divided economically. Too few jobs, too few opportunities. We have learned that subsidies don't work and that we can no longer afford them.
Chris has the questions on health care.
And we'll get right to that question of Obamacare. Mr. Kane, you are a survivor of stage 4 colon and liver cancer. And you say if Obamacare had been we all share in the happiness about your situation, but you say if Obamacare had been in effect when you were first being treated, you'd be dead now.
The reason I said that I would be dead under Obamacare is because my cancer was detected in March of 2006. And from March of 2006 all the way to the end of 2006, for that number of months, I was able to get the necessary CAT scan, tests, go to the necessary doctors, get a second opinion, get chemotherapy, go get surgery, recuperate from surgery, get more chemotherapy in a span of 9 months. If we had been on the Obamacare and a bureaucrat was trying to tell me when I could get that CAT scan, that would have delayed my treatment. My surgeons and doctors have told me that because I was able to get the treatment as fast as I could, based upon my timetable and not the government's timetable, that's what saved my life, because I only had a 30% chance of survival. And now I'm here 5 years cancer-free because I could do it on